Reverend Franklin Graham was chosen to continue the work of his father, Billy Graham. He is the president and the chairman of Samaritan's Purse and the Billy Graham Evangelistic Association, and we recently caught up with him on his recent visit to Calgary. Franklin, thank you very much for being with us.
Thank you.
Franklin, I think everybody wants to know, how is your father doing?
He's doing pretty good. To be 91 years of age, he doesn't hear real well. He doesn't see real well. If you were to come up to shake his hand, he wouldn't see you till you got fairly close to him. But his mind is still very clear, and he's in, to be honest with you, he's in pretty good health, and the Mayo Clinic has said, without any major complications, he could live another 5 years or more, so he's counting on it.
And he continues to have some very interesting visitors. Tell us about President Obama coming to his home.
President Obama was vacationing in Asheville just last week, and he asked to come see my father, and my father agreed and invited him to his home, and so here comes the President of the United States to my father's home.
Yet another one.
And they had an opportunity to talk about just various things, but then my father had a chance to pray for the President. And interestingly, I asked the President, I said, Mr. President, do you mind praying for my father? And he did. So he prayed for my father prayed for him. It was very nice. And
what did they talk about?
They talked about golf. They talked about Chicago. They talked about just kind of spiritual things in general as far as it relates to this country. I talked to the President about some issues that I needed his attention on in Washington, and he listened to me and said he'd look into it. So, I don't know what will happen, but we had a good conversation.
Okay, we're going to raise those issues later in the interview. But first, just give us an idea how much North America has changed on its reception about Christianity in the 60 years the Billy Graham Evangelistic Association has been here.
If you take remember Chuck Colson when he came out with his book Born Again, when Jimmy Carter ran for president, he talked about he was a born again person. It was popular in the late 70s to be known as a born again evangelical. Well, from that day to where we are today, evangelicals are almost despised in American culture because of the media, the way the Hollywood, the entertainment industry always portrays, a pastor always in a negative way. Somebody who runs off with the choir, someone from the choir, they're cheaters or they've murdered somebody. They always put them in some cheap role. And that now, after almost 50 years in the entertainment business, ministers in America and in Canada are looked down upon by many people because they don't trust them. They see them on television as charlatans or whatever. And so we see in the culture today in America where people know nothing about God because we've taken God out of our schools. We've taken God out of our government. Any type of people, if you pray today in a public event and pray in the name of Jesus, you're going to get sued. When I was invited by George W. Bush to pray at his first inauguration, I prayed in the name of Jesus Christ. Well, the president got sued because of my prayer. And now he won, but there will be a day when you won't win. We will lose lawsuits like that in coming days.
Franklin, tell us about your thoughts on the National Day of Prayer being declared unconstitutional.
That's going to lose because that's been appealed. But this judge, her name is Crabb. I call her Crabby. Judge Crabby from the 9th District in Wisconsin. She said that it was unconstitutional. George Washington, the founder of our country, asked the 13 original colonies, he sent out word asking them to pray for him as he just had finished the battles at Lexington and Concord during the Revolutionary War. Then as they formed the government, they prayed. Almost every president since then has asked the nation at some point or another in their administration to pray. In 1952, both houses of Congress unanimously voted to have a National Day of Prayer, and that was signed into law by Harry Truman. And then President Reagan amended the law to make the first Thursday in May the National Day of Prayer. And now you look at this history from Reagan back to Truman, back to George Washington. Who is this Judge Crabby, this unjust judge? Who is she to say that George Washington, who founded our country, to say that it's unconstitutional? It's just ridiculous, So I think it's going to lose. President, he thinks it's stupid, and so he's appealed it.
It is interesting timing that you should be uninvited to the National Day of Prayer at the Pentagon. At the same time, the Commander-in-Chief comes to visit you and your father, and you have a chance to address it. Interesting timing.
I don't think that was by chance, because this controversy had just erupted the week before. It was the #3 story in the United States, was this decision to have me not come to the Pentagon. And then the president is taking a vacation in Asheville, North Carolina. He calls and he asks to see my father. And I don't think that was I don't think it was by chance. I think that was all part of God's plan. I don't know what that plan is, but I think that the timing of that, that was a God thing.